comm signal is strong, Command. Go ahead.
Congratulations, Nomad. Your squad has been chosen to field test our latest batch of equipment from the research and development team. We expect a full report on how well this equipment spreads managed democracy. Command out.
Roger that. Alright, you heard him, squad. Looks like Command is authorizing us to use some R&D weapons. I don't necessarily like being volunteered, but if it's for Super Earth, well, there's no better squad. Don't get cocky, and most importantly, don't panic with these weapons. I will say, after taking a look at the equipment here, that warp backpack, yeah, I'm gonna need one of those. Alright, well, let me fix it.
That's better. Alright, welcome back to the channel, Helldivers. Today we're going to be making a build based on the new Warbond control group. TLDR about the Warbond, out of the last 3 that we've gotten, including this one, I think this one's the best. Way better than Masters of Ceremony, and a little bit better than Force of Law. And that's because I think the theme is really strong, but all of the equipment and new things we get are either unique, good, or both unique and good at the same time. There's already a ton of videos covering the new Warbond, and I think it's a safe bet that if you're on the fence about it, go ahead and buy it. It's a good one. So that's a review out of the way. Let's get into the build. So first up, we got to go over the equipment. In our primary weapon here, it's going to be the VG70 variable. Now this thing is actually a pretty good primary weapon. It is light penetration, but 85 damage. It has a capacity of 49. And the unique thing about this weapon is the fact that it has 3 different fire modes on top of having 3 different RPM options. And the real standout about this primary weapon, at least to me, is the fact that this is the only primary weapon that can one-shot the back of a hull. Now, when it comes to customizations, we only have optics that we can customize. I really don't like the base dot scope here, but any of these other ones are pretty good. I am 1 level away from the combat scope here, but I think that's fine. Moving on to the secondary, I'm going to stay in the special category here. Now, this Warbond, the Loyalist, I think just pairs with it beautifully. But if you want to go with something like the Dagger or the Talon, I think that works too. The Loyalist is what I'm going to be showing off in the gameplay section, and this is going to be a nice medium penetration option for us. Moving to the throwables here, yeah, we're going to use the G31 arc grenade. This is arc, so it's going to ignore armor. This thing is really good, guys. You're going to see it in the gameplay section, but the fact that it pulses that arc blast, yeah, this is really strong. And definitely now a contender for one of my favorite grenades in the game. Taking a look at the armor here, we're going to go with the armor that's in the Warbond, and the armor passive is the Adreno Defibrillator. So once you die and your body parts are still intact, your Helldiver will actually basically go into a last stand mode where once their health depletes after they go into last stand mode, you will die. Now you can stim yourself, but again, your health will continually drop. And that's why I call it a last stand mode, because again, you're going to eventually die unless you get to a Pelican. So you can survive in this last stand mode, but again, you got to get to a dropship and it's got to be the end of the mission. Now it also increases the stim duration by 2 seconds and provides 50% resistance to arc damage. Now moving to the stratagem section, our first stratagem pick here is going to be the Plas 45 Epoch. And this is a really strong stratagem weapon, but there are some nuances to it. The first thing you got to look out for when it comes to the stratagem weapon is the charge time. But luckily there are a few indicators you need to pay attention to while you're using this weapon. The first indicator to look out for is the actual charge time on the back of the cannon there. And the ideal time to shoot this weapon is when it starts to go red. There's also a second indicator. If you don't want to look at that gauge, look at the front of the cannon, and when it does a blue discharge, that's when you need to fire it. This weapon can be very dangerous because that full charge comes really quick, and if it hits that, it blows up and you're dead. You can fire this thing before it reaches that maximum charge, but it's not going to do heavy armor penetration, and we want this thing to be like our anti-armor weapon. So a little getting used to with this weapon, but it's really good. Our next stratagem choice is going to be the Laser Sentry, and this is a great addition to the Sentry family. I love that this thing will catch something like those heavy Striders on fire, and the cooldown on this is actually really short. The Sentry can overheat, so if it sounds like it's about to explode, then yeah, you need to get the hell out of there, soldier. And our third stratagem pick is going to be the Warp Backpack. This is an amazing addition to us Helldivers that like mobility. We have the Jump Pack, we have the Hover Pack, and now we have this Warp Pack. This Warp Backpack can teleport you through a lot of terrain, including bunker doors. But kind of like the Epoch there, you got to take note of the indicators. So the first one is the gauge. If this gauge is less than full, anytime you use this jump, it will hurt you. And of course, if the gauge is empty and you try to jump, you will explode and you will die. You can also warp into some light enemies and explode them, but don't try warping into something like a Hulk. That won't end well for you. The other indicator is that purple beacon on top of the warp pack. If it stays purple, that means you can jump. If it turns red, that means it's going to hurt you. The time between full charge jumps, so you don't take any damage, is actually pretty quick. So just be patient with this and you're going to have a great time zipping around the map. And our last stratagem pick is kind of a flex pick. There are some stratagems like the Tesla Tower here that I think actually fit in theme with this Warbond because we do have some arc resistance. So I actually think the Tesla Tower works out pretty well here. In addition to that, I think you could go with the orbital laser as a good choice here, kind of like a heavy hitter. And that's probably what I'll go with in the gameplay section. But just note, yeah, this 4th slot, it's a flex pick. Just kind of pick up whatever you think you're going to need. Moving to the gameplay section here, we're going to talk about how does this loadout perform against each of the factions. And we'll start off with the Automatons because that's the major order, and more specifically, the Incineration Corp is what we're going up against right now. And being totally upfront, I think this loadout is the weakest against the Automatons, and that's because of how much armor the bots have. But that's not to say it can't work. The variable obviously does a fine job at taking out troopers and sniping out Devastator heads. And don't be afraid to change it to volley or the total volley shot there, and use it more like a marksman rifle or a sniper. A lot of people have been calling it more so a shotgun, but this thing has a pretty good amount of range on it before that bullet starts to drop, and it doesn't like have a bullet or like a pellet spread, so it can actually be pretty accurate from a long distance. Now, if you're having any trouble hitting the head of any Devastators or you get overwhelmed, the Loyalist is, I think it's pretty S tier against the bots there as a sidearm. It's got that charge up mechanic, which I think works perfectly with this loadout as far as being in line with the theme. And then if you run into big packs of Devastators or even Hulks too, the arc grenade there is excellent at locking them down and killing them because it does that arc damage which ignores their armor. And I like how this thing like bounces around between them. It can have a little bit of consistency issue if it like bounces away from them and so they're out of range of the arc blast. But other than that, I think this is an S tier grenade now. And then when it comes to your stratagem weapon, the Epoch there, how does this thing handle the bots? It handles them all pretty well, except for maybe Factory Striders. And with the Epoch there, there's only really 2 downsides to this stratagem weapon in my opinion. And one of them is the accuracy. You'll be aiming this thing and then your plasma blast will either go far left or far right. I'm hoping Arrowhead addresses this because it seems a little silly. But the other thing is that you have to stop to reload this stratagem weapon. It feels like you really should be able to reload on the run with this, but I can live with having to stop with it. Other than that, it's really good. You don't have to charge up the full shot if you just have one target in front of you. But this is definitely a weapon you want to be patient with. Make sure you get the full charge so you get the full damage and you get that big AoE blast. And it's a lot of fun. This probably actually might be the weakest weapon in the Warbond, but saying it's the weakest really doesn't mean much because I do think this stratagem weapon is actually still really strong. We already talked enough about the warp backpack. You can zip around the maps. You can maneuver yourself in any direction that you like flick your controller or keyboard in. It's great survivability. And then while charging a weapon like the Loyalist or the Epoch, you can warp and still hold that charge and then release it in a better position, like if you want to teleport behind a Hulk or something like that. The Laser Sentry and then the Orbital Laser or the Tesla Tower are going to be your giant chaff killers. The laser turret here is really good. It'll destroy Hulks, it'll destroy armored striders. It actually takes out turret emplacements too. This might be one of the best sentries out there just for how many targets it can take out, and it has a really short cooldown. But like I said at the start there, I do think this loadout is probably the weakest against the bots. Again, that Factory Strider kind of going to be a pain in the ass, but everything else I don't think you're going to have an issue with. Moving on to the Terminids, where I think this build, this loadout really shines. I mentioned how you can use the variable in a long distance sort of like marksman fashion, and I think it's perfect against the bugs because you can just snipe out like Alpha Commander heads from a far distance with like one volley. Other than that, the rest of the loadout, the rest of the kit here, it's like a playground against the Terminids. The arc grenade will wipe out bug breaches. The laser cannon will take out anything in front of it, including chargers and Bile Titans. Chargers are definitely the biggest threat against sentries, so as long as you look out for those chargers and maybe use your Epoch against them, your sentry is just going to rack up a shit ton of kills for you. And if you're against the Predator strain there, or I guess any type of stalker, Predator stalker, or regular stalker, or even the Charger 2, anything that's really fast, your warp backpack is going to let you either zip through them or away from them and keep you completely safe. It's going to get you out of a lot of bad situations if you're getting overwhelmed by the bugs. So basically what I'm saying is if you're trying to get used to this loadout and its different playstyle, I would go up against the bugs because I think each piece of equipment does really well against them. And as soon as you kind of hit that learning curve about how to use everything efficiently, ooh, You really do feel like some sort of like super future soldier or something. Now for the Illuminate, it's basically the same story. And a big shout out I want to give is the variable absolutely dunking on flesh mobs. 2 to 3 of those total volleys and these things go down, and you can do it from a safe distance. So maybe move aside, Eruptor, there's a new sheriff in town. Nah, I'm just kidding, the Eruptor's still probably a little bit better. Maybe. I don't know, that'd be a fun video. Anywho, keep in mind when it comes to something like a harvester, that eye is now light armor, so your variable can take out harvesters as well. The only thing it's not going to be able to take out is probably interceptors and leviathans. But again, very similar story about how this loadout performs against the Terminids. You're just going to have a field day against the squids and a really good time. But alright, Helldivers, that's the overview of basically the Warbond and a loadout to go with it. You guys let me know how you're enjoying the new loadout. I know this one might be a little bit split. Some people think it's S tier, I'm in that camp, and other people kind of think it's mediocre, so let me know where you lie. Overall, I do think it's a really fun Warbond to try out and get. But anyways, yep, that's it. I'll see you next time. Peace, take care.